Well, hello there. My name is Dan Skip Allen, and I am the host of the Top 5 Weekly. And this is the latest episode of the Top 5 Weekly. And this week is the third special episode because we're in the month of October. We're going to celebrate Halloween and everything that goes involved with Halloween and Halloween type movies. In the first episode, which, I didn't have power. I couldn't be on that show. We did female-led thrillers, which Stephen led the ship on that one. Thank you, Stephen, once again. Last week, we did monster movies. And this week, we're doing serial killers in movies. So there's actually some, I usually have a genre or a movie that I kind of go off the, well, we're doing this topic because of this film. We really don't have a specific film to go from this week. We got Medea's Boo and we have Ouija out. And then I would have to say probably the closest thing is, it's not a movie, but it's one of my favorite TV shows. The Walking Dead is coming back this Sunday night. So we have a couple horror-related type situations that are premiering this week. Nothing specific to serial killers, but we wanted to do this topic because it was such a cool topic within the horror Halloween genre of films. So we got our first time person on here. Carl, introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Carl, and I am the co-host of Steven's show, the Film Club Movie Show. And I actually was the one that started Film Club about 3.5 years ago, and I just love talking about movies. I'm glad you guys had me on. Thank you.
No problem. Once again, we have Stephen Billings.
How you doing, guys? I just realized now that with Andrew not being on, I've technically been on every episode. I've been on more episodes than Dan. That's kind of crazy, right? Now he's not going to bring me on the next 2 episodes or something. So
I'll strategically pick a couple episodes so I can make that I was on more episodes than you, Stephen. Probably in November.
It's cool.
And we got my co-host of the Best Damn Movie Show, my partner in crime. Once again, he's a huge film horror genre fan. So he said, "Oh, Skip, I want to be on. I want to be on this episode." I was like, "All right, Vinny, you can be on this episode because you wanted it so bad." Vinny, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Vince LaSpada. I'm the host of the Best Day Movie Show. Every week, me and Dan Skip Allen give you the latest news and information on movies. But today, or tonight, I should say, we're talking about serial killers. And I think we all have a little bit of serial killer in us, I should say.
I know I do.
I didn't know I did, but I guess.
Oh, come on. You know you do.
I try not to kill people.
Maybe like when we're driving in our car and somebody cuts us off, or
oh yeah,
or like the grocery store is taking way too long, or whatever. I don't know. Who knows? All right. So, like I said, we're talking about serial killers. So, with that in mind, we're going to start with our new man this week, Carl. Go ahead. What is your number 5?
Number 5. Okay. For my number 5, I'm going to go back to 2012. That's Maniac, and it's Elijah Wood plays Frank in Maniac. He's an absolute psychopath, and his fetish is to cut off the scalps of the women that he kills and take them back to his mannequin shop. He's pretty brutal. There's a particular scene in that movie that I still to this day, 5 years later, cannot get out of my head. And it basically he cuts the back of the girl's the tendon, the Achilles tendon, and she just falls over. It's horrible.
Wow, I never saw Maniac. I'll have to check that one out. I like Elijah Wood a lot.
Yeah, he really surprises you in this one big time. I never would have thought I would have saw something like this from him, but he does a tremendous job in it.
Oh, cool. All right, Stephen, what is your number 5?
If we think about serial killers in any media, I think a lot of us think of Dexter, right? and unfortunately we're talking about movies. So the closest thing in film to me that I could think of to somebody they've done that's kind of like Dexter is Mr. Brooks.
Nice.
Mr. Brooks plays this guy he's a serial killer. He's got this need, but he also has a family, and he's trying to continue to kill people and have a family. And then, of course, outside forces kind of fuck with his life. And you have like Dane Cook in there. He comes in. He's like, I want to come along and be a killer with you, And then there's Demi Moore, who's like the cop who's trying to catch the killer, but she doesn't know what she's doing. She shoots guns in hallways and doesn't know what she's doing. But Mr. Brooks, Kevin Costner, he's awesome. And also with that, his inner voice, which like Dexter has an inner voice, which is his father. In this movie, it's William Hurt, which William Hurt's awesome by himself. But Kevin Costner, and one of his greatest performances, I think. He's done some great movies, Field of Dreams, Dances with Wolves. But Mr. Brooks is an underrated one I think people need to check out.
Yeah, I got Mr. Brooks on my honorable mention. I love Mr. Brooks. Kevin Costner's great in that film. All right, Vinny, what is your number 5?
Well, my number 5 is Josh Stewart in The Collector 2000. Arkin, it was his character. And I got to tell you, I feel like he has a little bit of Jigsaw in him, just the slightest bit, because I feel like the movies are similar with some of the traps and some of the things that he does in there. But I got to tell you, though, this in 2000, I feel like this was underestimated as a good horror movie. But I feel like as the years go by, and, it's almost 16 years now since it's been out, I feel like it's one of those it's getting to be one of them cult classics. Not as I was gonna say Boondocks, but not as popular as Boondocks. But I feel like as the years go on, I talk to a lot of people, and they tell me that I always recommend The Collector to them, and they love it. So that's my number 5.
Yeah, I never heard of that movie, actually, Vinny. So that's interesting that you chose something that surprised me. So that's really good.
You've never seen The Collector?
No, I did not.
Wow.
So you guys surprised me with that one. I got a couple surprises on here. That's good. I always like to hear my panelists talk about movies that I haven't seen, so then I could go out and watch them. Well, hopefully, I don't know if I surprised you guys with my number 5, but it's a movie I just when I first saw it, it blew me away. I just absolutely loved it, and it's from an Oscar winner, Matthew McConaughey, as a character by the name of Fenton Meeks in Frailty, directed by Bill Paxton. Bill Paxton plays his father in a lot of the scenes, and you get Matthew McConaughey as the sheriff, but there's this backstory. And so we have this Powers Booth as this FBI agent. He goes to the sheriff in this town, and he starts talking to him about these murders and all this stuff. Then we go back in time, and we start seeing Matthew McConaughey as a kid, as a young guy and stuff, his character. And he's doing these murders and why he's doing them, what's the purpose of doing them. And his father, Bill Paxton, who, like I said, directed this film. Oh, my God, what a great, great film. And you really see what a great actor Matthew McConaughey is, because you just can't see it coming. When he's playing the sheriff, you just don't see it coming that he's the killer the whole time. I know, spoiler alert. Hope you guys saw the movie already.
I'm not. I can't see it now. Thanks.
I don't need to.
I forgot what we were talking about. What was this movie again?
Frailty.
Frailty. I absolutely love the movie. Sorry if I spoiled it for you guys, but all right, we're going back to Carl. What is your number 4?
Okay, for my number 4, I'm going to go to my man Quentin Tarantino, and I'm going to go with Stuntman Mike from Death Proof. This guy, I think that one of the reasons that I chose him is just because his method of killing people is just the most creative and inventive one on my list, personally. I am one of the few people that do love that movie. I love all of his movies, but I do really like that movie a lot. And My main thing is just his style of killing, putting the girls in the car and then just crashing the hell out of it. I mean, to me that's really great. And he plays it so well. It was nice to see Kurt Russell after all that time. It'd probably been, I don't even know, probably at least 8-9 years since his last film. But when he did that, his last big film, and yeah, I'm going with Kurt Russell from Death Proof.
Yeah, that's the underrated half of Grindhouse. I myself like the other half of Grindhouse.
A lot of people do.
Plateau is just so out there and campy, crazy. But that was the underrated half of that film, and it is a really good film. You're right. And Stuntman Mike is a crazy character. Steven, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is one that I've discovered not too long ago, and it's part comedy. A lot of it's comedy, and it stars Ryan Reynolds, and that's The Voices. He plays Jerry, and Ryan Reynolds plays Jerry, as they say, Jerry, and basically he's this guy that has had this problem before. Has been in mental institution. He had a very dramatic thing happen to him in his childhood, and now in this story, he's working in a factory. He's trying to live a normal life, and he's trying to. He's supposed to be taking his medication to get rid of the voices in his head that drive him to kill. And the voices in his head are split between. You have your angel and demon. You have the angel is his dog, and then his cat plays the devil on his shoulder that keeps pushing him to want to kill. And then of course he ends up killing anyway. And it's a really fun movie. I loved it the first time I watched it, and I love Ryan Reynolds. And some of the there's a specific scene where the first time he kills in the movie, he's like almost like telling himself not to do it, but then he's doing it, and he's like, no, like it's hilarious. Like, but yeah, it's a fun movie. I think it's probably on a streaming service right now. You can check it out, but check it out. Voices.
I
Who's
will.
that super hot girl from the beginning? What's her name?
I don't remember.
I can't remember her name, man.
Yeah, that seems like a strange movie to me. Another one you guys surprised me that I did not know about. All right, Vinny, what is your number 4?
My number 4 comes from a man named Tommy Flanagan, and When a Stranger Calls.
Sure.
He is the stranger. I feel like this has a little bit of Scream in it because with the phones and calling the person. But overall, I think it holds up to what it is. To me, it wasn't really that scary. But I tell you what, from him playing this guy on the phone that's a serial killer to now being on Sons of Anarchy, you would have never known he played that character prior to this movie or to being on the show.
All right, another one that I did not know about. So you guys are keeping it pretty surprising to me. Well, I'm not gonna do any surprises for you guys. I'm not that type of guy, except for Frailty. We're gonna go with an absolute classic from one of the great American directors. It's called Zodiac, and we have the Zodiac Killer, and it stars Jake Gyllenhaal, Robert Downey Jr., Mark Ruffalo, and John Carroll Lynch as the Zodiac Killer. I mean, they basically they say they haven't really figured it out, but they kind of figure it out. I mean, it's a great movie. No matter if they figured it out, if they didn't figure it out, whatever. One of the probably best movies of the 2000s. 2007 it came out. Probably one of the best movies of that decade, in my opinion. It's got to be one of the top 10 movies of that decade. But it's one of the all-time classic movies, Zodiac by David Fincher. I'm sure somebody else is going to have it on their list. But I had to put it at number 4 because I have 3 that I like better than Zodiac. So I always like to do between number 4 and number 3. I always like to ask a question. So I know some of us are younger than others. Me probably being the oldest. What is the first movie that you ever saw that you can remember about a serial killer? Starting with you, Carl.
I imagine the first one I saw was watching Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm sure that my grandfather used to show us, horror movies when I was little, and that's definitely the first one I saw. That, I mean, I don't really consider, he's not on my list, but I don't really consider him. He didn't have any superpowers or anything. He was just kind of influenced by his family. He's kind of so stupid that anything that they told him to do, he was going to do it. And I don't know if it really registered with me because I was probably 6 or 7 years old, but just that's the first one I remember seeing.
All right, you, Steven?
The one that really stands out to me that I think I probably watched first was probably Ghostface from Scream. It's probably the one I can remember the best. It was a very popular movie when I grew up in the 90s. I know, Dan, it seems like yesterday to you, but it was when I was a kid, basically. And, Ghostface is just, and then of course the costume is stuck around forever. It's always been there. And I would say that's the first experience I had with a serial killer type of movie that stuck with me, at least.
All right. Vinny, what was the very first movie you ever saw that you can remember that was about a serial killer?
Well, I know this guy has superpowers, so he doesn't count on my list. But the man that Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger, was that was my first encounter with a serial killer. I used to steal the tapes out of my brother's room and lock my door at night when everybody fell asleep. And one by one, I would watch them for a whole entire month, because I know there's not a month worth of Freddy Krueger movies, but when you try to watch something and people try to get up in the middle of the night and check on you, it's kind of hard to finish a movie. So Freddy Krueger was my first time watching a serial killer.
Well, I mean, I always do this. I'm a little older than you guys, but I am a huge Alfred Hitchcock fan. And so when I was a kid, I just absorbed everything Alfred Hitchcock. Maybe that's strange to you guys, but Psycho was the very first serial killer film that I watched, and I just watched it over and over and over again. I just absolutely love that film. All right, so going back to Carl, what is your number 3?
For my number 3, I'm going to go ahead and go with Michael Shannon from The Iceman. He plays Richard Kuklinski, who was he's basically a hitman for the mafia, but he registered over 100 kills himself. And it's in the traditional sense, you might not consider him a serial killer because he was doing it for profit, but he had a series of murders that he did. So in that sense, he's definitely a serial killer. And do what?
I said sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, he and Michael Shannon is one of my favorite actors, and in this movie in particular, he did such a tremendous job playing that role. He played a character, I think, like you mentioned earlier, a guy that's a family man, and he wanted to continue to have this family. He was married to Winona Ryder, and he just wanted to have a normal life, but eventually, as expected, everything blended together, and the cops showed up at his house, and I mean, there's just a lot of really great scenes in that movie. It's a really underappreciated movie. Not a lot of people have seen it, but it's a good one, and he'll be my number 3.
Yeah, I actually have seen it, and you're right. Michael Shannon is fantastic in that movie. That's a really good, underrated film. Steven, what is your number 3?
Well, me and you, Dan, we got something in common. Zodiac Killer. It's actually one of my. It's pretty close to maybe being my favorite Fincher film. I think it's very underrated. I actually saw it on my birthday, my 23rd birthday or something like that. I don't know, whenever it came out. But that movie is so good at building tension. There's so many great tension-filled scenes in that movie. And as you said, you don't ever really find out who the killer really is. You get an idea of who he is. but the scenes that the killer kind of is present are always memorable scenes, you know, whether it be the kids that are at the lookout and the car comes up, pulls up, they think it's a cop, but it's not, or the scene where the most chilling scene of the movie where the kids are out on the lake and he comes up in the mask and stabs the boyfriend to death. You know, he doesn't end up dying though. He's the only survivor of the whole thing. And it's like, there's a lot of just very memorable scenes, but it's a true life story. And that's part of what makes it so great, is that it's, and scary, is that it actually happened.
Yeah. And, you know, John Carroll Lynch, we know, I mean, he's basically portrayed as the Zodiac killer, but we don't know for sure if he's the Zodiac killer or not. All right, Vinny, what is your number 3?
Well, my number 3 is, I'm going to take it back a little bit, maybe 1 year after I was born. 1986's Henry, A Portrait of a Serial Killer, starring Michael Rooker, which it's funny because we all know Michael Rooker now in Guardians of the Galaxy and The Walking Dead, but he had a career before all that, and he was in this movie, he was a prisoner that went to prison for all these murders. And I tell you what, it's kind of a sick movie. I mean, it's not sick to where it's like so bloody, but it's sick to where that a person that could put this on paper and write this as a screenplay, knowing that this could actually be true, because I mean, there's so many inmates that go to jail for killing people. I mean, Michael Rooker was just a nut in this film.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Michael Rooker. You know, he was really good in JFK as well, and I think Slither. He was in that. Him and James Gunn have seemed to team up lately. Yeah, I saw that, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't remember ever seeing Henry, A Portrait of a Serial Killer, so I'm definitely going to have to watch that one. I mean, you guys have really doing a good job of bringing up movies I have not seen, movies that I have to put in my my queue, as they say on Netflix, or they used to say you have the queue on Netflix. You have to get these different movies, but I'll definitely have to see that one because I'm a fan of Michael Rooker. My number 3, we're going to go back with the American legend of film again. This guy. He just hits home run after home run after home run. But this is one of the greatest, I think one of the greatest films of all time. You got to put this on the list as one of the greatest films of all time. What's in the box? 7. Kevin Spacey is just, you don't hardly see him in the film, but when you do see him, he's fantastic. Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman, Gwyneth Paltrow. It's 1995's 7. Oh God, what a phenomenal film about. This is, you know, all the killings are about the deadly sins. I can't remember all of them. I know sloth, gluttony, greed. I don't remember all the 7 deadly sins, but
Gluttony's the one that sticks out to you.
Wrath.
The big fat guy who killed himself to death, or that was pretty gross. You know, we got to actually Inferno comes out this coming week, and that's got something to do with the 7 deadly sins in a way, Dante's Inferno. So, but yeah, I absolutely love 7. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's going to have that on their list. But I just, when I saw that film, I just was like blown away because it was just such a great film. And we don't see films like that anymore. But David Fincher is one of the few guys who can keep giving us something great every time out. Rarely does he have a miss. I think Gone Girl was a piece of crap, but that's me. All right, going with Carl.
Okay. Yeah, okay. For my number 2, actually, and this is, in my opinion, this is the best acting job of anybody on my list, personally. It's not my favorite, but I do think it's the best job, and it's Charlize Theron in Monster. I thought she was absolutely tremendous in this movie. It's one of the best performances I've ever seen. I had no idea that it was Charlize Theron until the movie was over. She plays Eileen. What's her name? Wuornos. Eileen Wuornos. She was a prostitute, serial killer kind of woman. That I mean, she's terrifying, especially because it's a true story. It's just a terrifying ordeal because I mean, this person actually existed and actually did the things that she did, and she would lure men and just brutally murder them. And it's kind of a difficult watch, but when you really consider the job that she's doing in this role, especially like I said, I didn't even realize it was her. But that's great. It's one of the best acting jobs I've seen. So that'd be my number 2.
Well, let me tell you a little story about Monster.
Mm-hmm.
I live in a little town about 25 miles west of Daytona Beach, Florida. Well, I've lived in Florida for about 23 years, and I have actually lived here during the time of the Eileen Wuornos.
Wow.
Years. And she was murdering people up and down I-95 in Port Orange, Daytona Beach, that area of Ormond Beach, Florida, all up and down I-95. And I'll tell you what, knowing that was taking place right here where I live made that story that much more scarier. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about the story right now. And it was all over the news when I was a teen, upper teen, 18, 19 years old, when it was going on. And I'll tell you what, you know what they always say when it comes to the Oscars? When you either gain weight or ugly yourself up or whatever, and that's how these women, specifically women, but sometimes men, will get the Oscars. And Charlize Theron had given great performance after great performance, but she was basically beautiful most of the time. So when she did this, and she gave that performance with the whole makeup job and all that went into it, she was a lock. And she was winning every award all through award season for her performances, Eileen Wuornos. So she absolutely was phenomenal as that character, Carl. So I just wanted to give that little story real before we go to Steven. I know Steven's bored of that story.
Not really bored, but it is my number 2. Now that you've talked a lot about it, Dan, I'll have maybe just a little bit to say. But yeah, like Carl said, a fantastic performance. Also, if you didn't know this, Patty Jenkins directed it, who's the one that's directing the new Wonder Woman movie. I kind of agree with Carl. It's not my favorite movie on the list. I watched it again to prepare for this. It's not the best movie, but she is so good in it that it's hard not to at least watch it for her performance. And also Christina Ricci's performance too. They're both really good. They play off each other really good in the movie. And it's just such a disturbing relationship, and her twist. Obviously there's a part of her, something happens to her that turns her completely into what she becomes, which a guy tries to rape her on one of her when she's out, doing her thing. But from there, she twists it into a way to make money, and a way, and it just gets out of hand, and she kills good people instead of just bad people, and just it gets out of hand, and then it just becomes who she is, and it's crazy, and it's kind of sickening, and and then there's a part of you that wants to feel for her a little bit, but you don't, because it's like she's maybe a little bit of a product of her environment, but it's very interesting, and you don't really see female serial killer ever, and especially in film. So it's like, it's a very interesting watch, and it is on Amazon right now for free to watch, so you can watch it.
Yeah, that's real good. I'm glad you brought up Patty Jenkins, because she's just a great director that needs to get the out as far as that goes. I think Wonder Woman will be that movie that really gets her out there, and everybody's like, wow, this woman needs to get a lot more work. All right, Vinny, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is a film from 2000 that I think is a classic. It's starring Christian Bale as Patrick Bateman. Professional by day, killer by night. And this was set in 1987 in the film. But what a great way to put a horror movie in perspective. I mean, just think of it. You know, you got a man that's a powerful man, makes a lot of money, very stressed during the day, has a important job, and then by night he's trying to take his frustration out on all these people that he wants to kill. I mean, perfect, bravo. I mean, I couldn't say it better myself.
Yeah, I mean, I talked earlier before the show started that I had a very tough omission, and it was American Psycho. I absolutely love that film. He kills these people by having the music of Genesis. You gotta love that. I grew up with Genesis, one of my favorite bands, Phil Collins. Then some of the crazy. Then the whole stuff with the business cards and comparing, it's like comparing penises, you know. Hey, look at my business card, you know, all the crazy stuff that happened in the 80s, you know. But I'm sure somebody else might have it, so I'm not going to talk too much about American Psycho. But I am going to talk about another Psycho. His name is Norman Bates. And I just want to show you my Alfred Hitchcock shirt. And if you look very closely on my shirt at the bottom, you see Mr. Norman Bates with a knife, and he's killing Janet Leigh. Marion Crane. Norman Bates, I mean, what a crazy, crazy character. Psycho came out in 1960, obviously, directed by Alfred Hitchcock and Anthony Perkins. I mean, I don't think Anthony Perkins has been in anything since or before better than this role. He's completely known for this role, and he knocks it out of the park. And of course, the main character, if you haven't seen the movie, it's I don't know, it's 1960, so we're talking like 50-something years old. So if you haven't seen Psycho by now, shame on you.
What do you think of the remake?
Garbage.
Carl, why would you even bring that up?
Christ.
It's the same movie.
It's not the same movie.
Marion Crane gets killed halfway through the movie, you know, and it's just, oh God, it's such a classic. I mean, I'm a huge Alfred Hitchcock fan, as I said before, and that movie, going back to, that was my first movie I ever saw with a serial killer. So I just love that movie so much. All right, so before we go on to our number ones, does anybody have? You guys have basically used 3 of my honorable mentions already on your lists. I had American Psycho, Monster, and Mr. Brooks all in my honorable mentions, and I also have From Hell, Red Dragon, and Dahmer in my honorable mentions. So, do you guys have any honorable mentions that you'd like to talk about real quick before we go on to our number ones?
All of mine have been mentioned too, except for one. I only have one on there that's not been mentioned yet. Probably will be, so I won't really elaborate on this person, but it's Jigsaw, Tobin Bell from the Saw series.
Yeah, he's just, that first Saw was fantastic.
Yeah.
Steven, nothing for you?
I do. I mean, most of them have been presented by you guys, like American Psycho and John Doe, and some of my list is based off of, like you said, other lists, not repeating myself, and not and also just kind of trying to pick some off the wall choices. But yeah, Hannibal Lecter, another one.
Vinny, you got any honorable mentions?
Yeah, I got SpongeBob SquarePants, Patrick, Elmo, and Big Bird, all on my honorable mentions.
Also, McDonald's.
Oh yeah, Ronald McDonald too. I like that guy.
No, McDonald's itself.
Oh,
restaurant.
yeah. What about Wendy from Wendy's?
Oh God.
Fast Food Nation's a movie.
Supersize Me.
That'll get sick watching that. All right, Carl, what is your number one serial killer?
My number one is my favorite serial killer movie, and I hope you don't consider this cheating, but it's 2 people. Mickey and Mallory Knox from Natural Born Killers. that entire movie is insane. Some people actually, I didn't know this, but some people don't like it. I didn't realize that until a couple years ago. I thought that was pretty universally loved, but just the way that their motivation is set up, it feels like a sitcom. It just doesn't feel real at all, and the whole movie, none of it feels real. It feels like another reality that they're living, because they are. I mean, that's exactly what Oliver Stone was trying to capture in that movie, was that feeling of, I guess, euphoria that they were feeling while they were doing this, and just leaving one person behind. And I mean, they were just psychopaths, and that's the scariest. I mean, obviously, Monster is scary. I mean, any of these people is scary to think that they would be alive, but people as crazy as those two were is got to be the scariest one. I mean, they literally just killed everybody they came in contact with, except one person, so they could stay famous, and they're just terrifying. So they're my number one. They're my favorite.
Yeah, Natural Born Killers. What a great movie! I love Woody Harrelson.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, he's great in that. All right, Stephen Billings. What's your number one?
Well, you've already brought him up. To me, he defines the serial killer genre. He, to me, is just not only, it's stupid to say that he's the coolest, but I just like the scenario, and they've made actually a really great TV show after him. Also rivals the main actor that played him in the movie, and that's Psycho, Norman Bates. I mean, just the idea of this motel off the side of the highway, which has now been basically turned into, like, they don't get a lot of customers anymore because there's been a highway built off, and then nobody's coming through anymore. And he has, he dresses up like his mom to kill people. I mean, it's just odd. I mean, come on. But in the movie, he's just there's so many great instances of, like, madness when he's trying to be charming to lure the woman in, or be nice to keep the people around, and then suddenly you'll see just a glimpse of, like, crazy. He's so good in the movie. I'm forgetting his name, Perkins.
Perkins.
Yeah, and it's just that movie, man. And, like, I'm not going to bring up that remake that Carl tried to bring up a second ago, because but this movie, obviously the shower scene is perfect. And Hitchcock just built up suspense. So many great moments. Of course, finally finding out the twist with, his mother being dead and a skeleton in the basement and stuff. It's just a great film, and it's a great character that's, of course, stood the test of time, made a bunch of stupid sequels, made a remake, and then they made a cool TV series, Bates Motel. So it's a character that people really like, and it's awesome. Yeah.
And I could speak for Vinny. I know Vinny really likes Bates Motel. So, all right, Vinny, what is your number one serial killer film or character?
Well, I guess maybe, you've already talked about it. So, my number one is Bates Motel, or Psycho. So, what I'm going to do? I'm going to talk about Bates Motel, since you guys have already talked about Psycho. But I like how they've changed, and they show what Norman Bates was really like as a kid. Now, who is to say that that's how it really was? But he's going off a script that has been written by, people from A&E. But I tell you what, it's sad that the 5th season coming up is the last, which really stinks, because I feel like, if Twilight, if any of those shows on HBO can do, 9, 10, 11 seasons, I feel like there's so much more that we have not seen from Norman Bates and his family that could go on to carry on. But I mean, listen, if you've not seen Bates Motel, it's just a fantastic show and well written. And I like the fact that Freddie Highmore is an English actor. And if you would never go and see him on YouTube and see how he is, and you see how he talks on the show, you would never know he's from England. I mean, he does a great job with an American accent. And there is a cool 10-minute skit promoting, I think it was season 3, where it's on the back lot and he gets mad because of not getting paid the way he should be, which is kind of funny. But yeah, my number 1 is Psycho.
Yeah, obviously on the panel we have a lot of good taste here. I'm going to go with an absolute phenomenal film, probably one of the greatest films of all time, one of the greatest characters of all time. I'm going to obviously the main character is not the character in the film. So Buffalo Bill, played by Ted Levine, is the main serial killer in Silence of the Lambs. But we also have Hannibal Lecter, who is in prison. So we have multiple films where he is portrayed by Anthony Hopkins, Red Dragon, Hannibal. So, but Buffalo Bill, played by Ted Levine, is actually the main killer in Silence of the Lambs. But I'm going to go with Silence of the Lambs because it's got the 2 killers. We have him like in a Hannibal Lecter in a role of like trying to help out Clarice Starling, giving her information about how she can capture this new serial killer known as Buffalo Bill. So I mean, I know some of the panels, specifically on the female-led thriller episode, talked about Silence of the Lambs and Clarice Starling from that point of view. So I was just like, well, since I wasn't on that show, I was just like, well, let's go from the other aspect. It is one of the greatest serial killers in film history, and you have him in like a supportive role of helping, trying to find this new serial killer of Buffalo Bill, played by Ted Levine. And if you ever seen the show name called The Bridge on FX, Ted Levine plays like a sheriff in that, and he's really good. But yeah, I had The Silence of the Lambs, Buffalo Bill, and Hannibal Lecter as my number 1 serial killers in film. I just want to say thank you to my entire panel. Let everybody out there know where they can find you, starting with Carl.
You can find me on Facebook at my name, Carl Champion Jr., or on the Film Club Movie Show page, or on the Film Club page itself, or on Twitter at FC Movie Show, or on the YouTube page, Film Club Central. There's a lot of different ways that you can find me, but mainly on Film Club. That's the easiest way.
Steven, I'm going to recommend nobody tries to find you. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, that's unfortunate because everybody loves me. I'm just kidding. You can find me, Stephen Billings, on Facebook. You can find Film Club Central, which is the channel I run on everything. We got a Twitter, we got Instagram. We got a bunch of different shows. We got the Film Club Movie Show. We got Not Another Geek Podcast. We got Lights, Camera, News, Traumateries, Rapid Reactions. We got everything under the sun. Come over to our channel, subscribe, like. Oh yeah, we're on Top 5 Weekly. I'm sorry. This is not my show.
All right, that's why I asked you where you can be found. Or if I didn't ask you, I wouldn't want you to say. All right, Vinny, where can the good folks out there find you?
Well, you can usually find me at a pizza shop eating your pizza or anybody else's pizza. Not sure which one yet, but you can always find me, Vincent LaSpada, on Facebook. Also, go to thebestdaymovieshow.com, where you can always find me and my buddy Skip doing the show each week with all new trailers, reviews, movie news, anything that has to do with movies. We're talking about it. And that's all I got.
And like Vinny said, I forgot to say Jonathan Demme was the director of Silence of the Lambs, and it came out in 1991. I forgot to say that. But you can also, just like Vinny said, the Best Damn Movie Show, we record. We got our big 50th episode spectacular.
Oh,
This
that's right.
week, we have some real live horror guests on the show, hopefully, crossing our fingers. We're praying that we get these people on the show. We're going to have a little bit of snippets of some of our older interviews. Like always, we're going to talk about box office, movie reviews, movie news. Vinny and I have been doing this for a while now, and you know, I'm glad we got up to 50 episodes. And also my name, Dan Skip Allen, on Facebook, Pinterest, and Twitter. Something's wrong with my Instagram. I don't know what the heck is wrong. I got to figure that out, so you can't go to Instagram and find me anymore.
Been hacked by a serial killer.
That's it.
So the serial Instagram hacker.
Yes.
All right, well, I just want to say thank you once again to all my guests. And next week, we're going to be doing our top 5 horror movies of all time. So this is going to be a good one next week. I'm really looking forward. In honor of Halloween, it'll be our final Halloween special episode. And, you know, it's been a fun month doing all these Halloween-themed episodes. I've been really enjoying this. And we had a great time today. So thanks again, and see ya later.